Thank you very much, Ron. When I was asked a little while ago whether I would be willing to host this evening, it didn't take very long for me to say yes, because I know who the guest was going to be, and it is someone out of the sport, out of my sport of triathlon. So I'm very excited to be talking to our guest tonight, who I'll introduce in a minute. I got started with triathlon at a very young age, when triathlon first came to Europe. But in that one race that I did as a kid, I figured out that my strength wasn't the swimming, and it wasn't the running really, it was the cycling. So I pursued the cycling and got rid of the rest. Then, by accident, I got back into triathlons many years later. And this was because one of my good friends was a very, very good triathlete. And he asked me to come with him to France to train. And I would just train with him on the bike. And that's what we did for several weeks. He paid for everything. It was perfect for me. He had, at the end of that training camp, he had a race planned in France, one of the hardest long distance triathlons, Embrun-Man. And that was the event that he was going to do. So we trained together on the bike, and then he did all the other stuff with the swimming and the running. But unfortunately, 3 days before the race, he got injured. And he ended up in the hospital, and he said, well, it's not a problem, here's my number, why don't you do it? So I said, well, but I haven't done any swimming, and I haven't done much running. And he said, nah, it's not a problem, it's easy. So that's how I did my first long distance triathlon. I was particularly interested in it because it's such a fascinating event. It's so long, so many things can happen. So many things need to be perfect to have the perfect race. And nutrition is just one of them. I've done many more Ironmans since that time. I've been 6 times to Hawaii, and I still haven't figured it all out. So hopefully tonight I'll get the answers I'm looking for. So tonight's guest, and maybe we can show a little bit one day out of the life of our guest tonight. I'll just watch this video. Tonight is Sebastian Kienle. So I will ask him to come and sit next to me in a second. We have one more video, but he was the 2012 world champion for half distance, 70.3. 2013 world champion for that same distance. In 2014 he became the Ironman world champion in Hawaii. And this year, I think on both those championships, the 70.3 and the full distance, he was that close to a first place and finished second in both. So we'll play this next video and ask Sebastian to come up.
Men's leader Sebastian Kienle is on a lead drive and approaching the finish line. He can finally allow himself to enjoy the reality that he is about to be crowned world champion. Today was his day. Sebastian Kienle was able to put the pieces of his Kona puzzle together perfectly.
From Germany, Sebastian Kienle!
Put your hands together for Sebastian Kienle. Thank you so much, Sebastian, for joining us tonight. And
thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure.
I'm just here because I was so curious about the nightlife, or what did she say?
Yeah. Oh. Well, that's later. First, you have to work. So let's start at the very beginning. So I've read somewhere that at the age of 8, you're sitting in a classroom, and the teacher went around to all the kids in the class asking what you wanted to become when you grow up, and a lot of kids were given the standard answers of kind of a doctor or a nurse, or
they said more things like special agent and astronaut and stuff like that. Yeah. And I really wrote down I want to be a professional triathlete, and well, she said it actually has to be something realistic. And 20 years later, she came and visited a race of mine, not too far where I was growing up, and she brought me this sort of newspaper we made back then, and I actually was the only guy who probably succeeded in his plan and became the thing what he was writing down back then.
That's amazing. So at what age did you actually start?
Yeah, 8 is, I think, pretty much right, yeah. Of course, you're not starting with this crazy stuff. There is a very good program for short distance athletes in Germany as well, within the Olympic Federation, and of course I started that at the beginning, so drafting short course triathlon. Yeah. Sometimes I wish I would have started with swimming.
Yeah. So where did the idea come from? Is it like in your family or friends, or something you saw somewhere else? Or
I think, like most of those things, it got influenced by a lot of different factors. Back then, I definitely wasn't like what you call somebody who is able to perform good in a team environment. I was always a little bit more motivated than the other guys in the team, but definitely not more talented, and that most of the times leads to a little bit of a difficult position in a team, especially at this age. So at that time, I think the ego part of the sport definitely was a good thing for me, actually, to get educated. And I think my parents, they supported it because they what they realized was that there's probably a little bit too much energy in this kid, and if he's not using it in sport, then he's probably use it in a more stupid way. So that's the reason why there always was support, I guess, at the beginning. And then I have to say, I never was like the most talented guy. I never won any race till I was probably 15. I always have been in the mix, but never at the very top. And I think that was what kept me hungry for a long time.
So when was the kind of first time that you thought, oh, actually, I'm actually pretty good at this?
Of course, I think that was on the very first day I started with the sport. but it wasn't really true back then, I guess. I think 2006, I won the under 23 German short course title, and that was the first time when I realized you actually really have the potential to make this dream a goal, like not something what's in your fantasy, but what it's actually really worth investing in it. Because you might probably think that when you have that goal or that dream with the age of 8, that you are some sort of a fanatic, and that's actually definitely not the case. I think it's more the other way around. If you are a fanatic, then you get burned out pretty soon. And I often had stretches where I wasn't really interested in the sport anymore. So I took some time off, and I think that's an important thing, because in a sport like this, you're not becoming good within like 5-6 years. You need probably 10,000-15,000 hours of training till you actually start to really reach your potential. So yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of hours. So then you, what was your dream like at that time? Was it Ironman Hawaii? Was that the dream, or was it Olympic, or?
When I started the sport actually wasn't even Olympic. So 2000, it was the first year when our sport was in the Olympic program in Sydney. I think sometimes I wish I would have invested more into the Olympic distance and try to have some success there. But what I have to say is, I think the level of freedom in my sport is probably the biggest in all of sports. Even bigger than in so-called fun sport like surfing or snowboarding or whatsoever, because I could pick my events whenever I like. I could choose my sponsors myself. I'm not having any like federation in the background. I mean, of course, I have a training group and I have a coach, but he's probably not calling me later to try to check out if I'm already in the box or not. So it's a lot of freedom, but it also requires a lot of self-management, so to speak.
And when did you kind of move up to the longer distances?
I think I was 25 when I did my first long course, but the people already asked me like 5 years earlier why I'm not already moving up, because I was a strong cyclist already back then, and cycling is the longest part in Ironman, so it's about 4.5 hours, depending on the course. And so, of course, that's where you could make up the most time. And but I think it's a very demanding sport, and unlike in a lot of other sport, you really have only this much bullets for big races. That's at least my feeling. So it's not that you get better and better through every event. It's actually, I think my first event was the event where I was able to push myself the furthest I've ever pushed myself, and it's when you realize that there is this wall and it is coming at one point, you try to not hit it at full speed. And so when you lose that after the first time, it's getting, of course, a little bit more difficult, because it's like the first time at the dentist, you don't know, it's probably gonna hurt, and then the next time you're already afraid of that. So.
And then 2012, you become a world champion, the 70.3 distance, right? How did that feel?
It was definitely most of the amazing wins I've ever had, and I have to say that's the biggest problem with success, no matter where you have success, is always when you have it once, you always get measured on this success. And even if you think it's not happening to you, of course it's happening. And then the first big success is always the greatest. I really have to say that it's. I didn't expect it, and so it was amazing. Even if it was on a way smaller stage than Hawaii later, and even if it wasn't connected to any big money or whatsoever, it was still something that sticks. Yeah.
And then you repeat it the year after?
Yeah, it's. They say it's tougher to stay up there than to get there, and it's definitely true. And I think a couple of guys said, that's like a one-trick pony. And so I did exactly the same trick the year later. And it's a lot of different feelings how you could race. Yeah. So one of the feelings you could race with is racing angry. And sometimes it's a really fulfilling sensation when you race angry and you want to prove somebody something. I think a lot of athletes perform very well because of that. I mean, I don't know if this goes a little bit too far, but I mean, hate and fear are probably the only reasons why people really kill. So some very strong motivations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And then you moved up to Ironman distance in what year? Was it
2012. I did the first. 2011 actually. I did the first time in Ross, and that was already great success. I had the fastest rookie time ever. I was the first guy who broke the 8 hours on the first attempt. And so, of course, when you start like this, it gives you a lot of confidence. But on the other hand, it's also some weight on your shoulders, definitely.
Yeah, that's incredible. Let's just break that down a little bit. Those 8 hours for people here who've not done an Ironman. You swim 3.8k, 2.6 miles in, let's say, at the time, probably 55 minutes or 54?
48 minutes, something.
There you go.
It's a fast course. I mean, it's not like a race in a laboratory. I mean, it really depends a lot on the course, and that's the reason why the times are probably interesting, but it's more interesting for sponsors and media than for the athletes. It's not like swimming or running on the track, because you have swims where you have a wetsuit, and then you have swims like in Hawaii where you have waves and stuff. So there's quite a delta between the times.
Well, I just want people to get an idea of what this performance is, right?
Definitely.
So 180k or 112 miles in, now that's a bigger time, 4 hours and 20 minutes. Roughly. Who can ride 25 miles an hour for 10 minutes? Then I don't have to ask who can do it for 4.5 hours. and then after that, you run, right? And you run a marathon in under 3 hours, 2:54.
Yeah, for the first time it was exactly 2:54.
So, who's run a sub 3 hour marathon here? Yeah. So, someone's got a friend here, yeah?
I know somebody.
No, it's incredible when you put it all together, because you don't get a break in between. You start, you swim, you bike.
You try not to have any breaks.
Yeah, minimize the breaks for sure. That's all. That's learn one thing already. That's where I go wrong sometimes. So that's amazing. Now I'm really interested in sort of how this works, because I wanna learn a little bit about the nutrition side of things and how you prepare for these events. Maybe first a little bit of a training question. So what does it take to to train for an Ironman race? What, in terms of weekly commitment?
I think my coach would say to his age group, first you have to get divorced, and that's the base. So no, I mean, it really depends on your goal, obviously. Of course, if you want to be at that level, I would say if you are talented and if you have a background in one of those three sports, and you already have been like at a really high class, then I would say like 28 hours per week for 10 to 15 years. And then you might have a chance, if you're lucky, and not get either injured, burnout, or whatever.
And those are averages you're talking about?
Averages, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not like the guy who's training the most in this business, but I think I have like some record numbers for you, because that's always the most interesting numbers, I guess. So I think my week average record is something about 44 hours, and my 3-day record is something like 28 hours of training within 3 days. Yeah, that's obviously a lot of work, but yeah, it's like you said, it's not only about the work you put in, it's about the quality of the work. It's like so many small things, like in all high performance sports, yeah.
And obviously then recovery becomes extremely important, and everything you do to recover, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing when you compare this to running. When you imagine you have somebody training just 20 hours per week, let's go with like 15k per hour average speed, which is okay for a very good runner, and he's already running 300k a week. And even like very high class runners usually could not do that for a longer time. So, and we do pretty much 50% more volume hour-wise, and you could do that because you add swimming and cycling into the running. And I mean, you can't run for 7 hours, or you can run for 7 hours, but it's probably not very beneficial for marathon training. But 7 hours on a bike is nothing completely unusual. And so it's not a lot of stress on your body when you swim and bike, because you don't have to carry your own body weight. So you could train a lot of volume, you have to train a lot of volume, but because you do that, it's even more important to manage the sessions during the day, and of course during the year, and how you manage recovery, because at the end it's more important that you are able to maintain this workload for a longer period, let's say a couple of years, or at least a couple of months, than just like to do 3 or 4 weeks of crazy training and then be ill and or injured. And yeah.
So let's go to race day. So you get up at 4 a.m. or what time?
Yeah.
Roughly. Early, and then you have a breakfast. What does it look like?
So I always try to keep the food as simple as possible before the race, and it has to work on every place in the world, because it's easy to figure out some stuff that works for you at home, where you have like all the shops you know and everything, and the mom is cooking for you or whatsoever. So, but it's a different story if you are probably in the US and they don't have this sort of bread. Yeah, I usually have like an oatmeal with water, or I have bread, and I just like try to find the bread which is not like full with the stuff I don't need, I don't like, and yeah, usually I have like a can of coconut water and a bottle of electrolyte drink with carbohydrates, and a 1 or 2 cups of coffee, and then that's like the base. And then I usually have like 1 or 2 power bars with me. So another hour before the race, I eat a little bit more. And so we did a lot of experiments with different stuff, like having a high dose of sugar 15 minutes before the start, so that you have like this pretty much on-demand sugar from the stomach into the blood during the first minutes of the race, so that you could actually enhance the storage of carbohydrates and stuff like that. But it's always difficult to do that. Sometimes the science behind it is another story than the reality. And to do that, especially in a race like Kona, where you have waves and salt water and everything, it's very demanding on your belly. So you have to be careful with that, because then otherwise it goes the other way.
The swim usually sorts out my electrolytes in the first part already. So. But yeah, so that's your breakfast. How long before?
That's 3.5 hours before the race. Yeah.
And then you've prepared your nutrition. You have a plan for the race itself.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's very important to have a very structured plan during the race. It's not only because of the nutrition, it's also because it gives you some sort of a mental structure. In the first races, I always had a timer on my watch to eat regularly. They say Ironman is a eating competition, and I probably might agree, but then I would have won this year, that's for sure. So, but yeah, the nutrition plays a really big role, because it's just on the borderline where you still go very fast. It's still like a race, but on the other hand, it's like too long to just go through it without thinking about nutrition. And it's always the best way to compare it with the car, right? I mean, you could have the biggest engine, without the fuel, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's very true. So what does your plan look like?
So on the swim, obviously, the only thing you could do is drink water, and especially in Kona, that's not something I could recommend. It's more the other way around. You actually, when you start with the swim, you have to be aware of not drinking water, because it contains so much salt, and that really could harm the ability to intake food later, and the whole digestion system could be like really nervous then. So first I start with solid food. So I have like 1.5 power bars usually in small pieces, and I have a special box on the top tube of my bike, so it's very easy to access. I start with that because I want to choose something actually. It's not only giving you the feeling of eating something, but it's also, I guess, important like to get the whole system prepared for the intake of food. So the intensity on the bike at the beginning is not like super high, so you are able to actually eat some solid food, and later on I switch to gels. I have those gels in a bottle, so it's easy to handle. You always want to make sure that you have a plan B, because it happens that you might lose a bottle or something, and then you don't want to be screwed. So you always have to think about the plan B. So in a race like Hawaii, I often have 2 bottles. So I split the gels in half, so that when I lose a bottle, that I'm not lose everything. And then I have other bottle at the halfway turnaround point. So in case I need this, that I make it till there and then have an extra bottle. So let's say it's about 90 grams carbohydrates per hour, and it's difficult to measure, especially in Hawaii. because they have neutral aid stations where you also have a sport drink or something, and it's always difficult to say how they actually mix their drinks, and so I try to be as self-supplying as possible, but of course that's not possible at 4.5 hours. You have to take some water from the aid stations, and that's also the biggest issue in Hawaii. You have to drink a lot, like really a lot of fluids, and that's not always going very well together with eating a lot. So yeah, it's definitely an eating competition.
So how many gels are we talking about in your two bottles?
I think that's about 16 gels. Yeah. And the good thing is with the bottle is compared to having those in your jersey pocket. I mean, the most people, they look at the gel and they say like, okay, it has something like 28 grams of carbohydrates or something, and then they take the gel, but there are like 5 grams or 6 grams left in the packet. So when they make the calculation, or when you tell the people to make the calculation, you should consider that there might be something left in the package. And when you have like 16 gels, it starts to add up. So you better want to make sure that you probably have a scale and actually weigh the stuff when you put it in the bottle.
Yeah. Now you said something that surprised me a little bit, and that is that the beginning of the bike is relatively easy. You say most triathletes I've spoken to, especially at Kona, say the first part of the bike is ridiculous, and I can't eat the first hour at all.
I mean, I think like the whole race is actually not really fast. I mean, yeah, it really. I mean, if you compare it like to the specialist, right? I mean, when you look at a guy like Haile Gebrselassie, like how fast he runs a marathon, and even if you take like the best runners from the triathletes and let them run a marathon, they probably run the marathon like more than half an hour faster than they actually run in the Ironman. And when I do my training runs, in probably 70% of my training runs, I'm actually running at the faster pace I run in the Ironman. So what slows you down is really muscle fatigue, mental fatigue, and energy. And the thing is, coming back to compare this whole thing with the car, it's probably not a very good idea, but when your engine is running hot, you could just like keep hitting the gas pedal. At one point the engine might blow up, but you could still go. But when the tank is empty, you can't go. Like it's over. And during my career, I had a couple of it's over moments, and those are like really bad. Like, I mean, usually, first of all, the body tells you to stop this shit. And when you are actually not willing to stop, the brain pretty much takes over and stops it by itself. Like, there's no chance to power through this, or you just lose your will of doing anything. So yeah. What was the question?
I don't know. So I want to go back to the fueling again, because we got to the bike part, and then you got the run where you have very regular feed stations, and now you can't take your own fuels as easily. So what do you do there?
You have the ability to place bottles at 6 stages on the run course, but that's fairly new. That's just like 2 years ago when they started doing this, because it's not very easy logistical to do this. Usually I try to have like a liquid gel, which is you could take this without any water, and it's like way easier to actually to swallow it. And I have like probably 2 of those per 40 minutes, something like that. So it's far away from those 90 grams I had on the bike, and that's because it's so much more difficult to actually digest food during the run, or even to intake the food on the run. So sometimes it's better to cut down the amount and make sure it's actually arriving where you want it and not where you don't want it.
So there is a lot of focus on kind of carbohydrate intake and fueling on race day. What happens the rest of the days in training? Is there still a focus, or is there? How does that work?
Just really quick, back to the last one. I mean, there's always like a lot of small tricks you could use. Probably, I don't know if you read about the study that you could actually just like put a mouthful of Coke and spit it out again, and the body starts to fire more carbohydrates out. So there are a lot of like small tricks you could use towards the end of the race, and we are always trying to do this. We experimented a lot, with salt in diet and stuff like that. So it's really over the years a trial and error thing what we do during the race, and so I think it's pretty good right now where it is. So coming back to the everyday food, it really depends on the phase of the season. Right now it's everything. No, I mean it really depends on how high the intensity is on the bike, for example. So I think you already had a couple of speakers before this, so I think you already heard about the food required for the work or something like that. Mm-hmm. Is that, yeah? So that's pretty much where we move. So when we have like longer sessions where we try to improve the fat burning rate, of course we try to cut down carbs, for example for breakfast or even the night before. Sometimes I do sessions, especially now in this phase of the season, where I do a longer indoor session because it's not that much stress for the immune system. Especially when you try to go a little bit lower with carbs, it's causing some stress on the immune system. So I do this on a stationary trainer, and for example, one of the sessions is that I have the bike ready on the stationary trainer. I get up and I have a coffee and a little bit of water, and then I hop on the stationary trainer and I start to warm up for 15 minutes. Then I do a couple of 1 minute intervals, not too high of intensity, but you try to get as high as it's required to start to burn mainly carbs, so that you try to empty the tank even more. And then you go for like an hour 20 on a pretty low level. So then you have like an hour 50 total, and then I actually start eating, and then I start eating the race fuel, and then I try to go up with the intensity. So I try to empty pretty much the tank, and then I start to eat, and I start to get higher with the intensity. That's one of the stuff we are doing now, and we have done that last year, and it's relatively effective for me at least. It's always like, I mean, you could, instead of doing that, you could also just like go have your breakfast and go on the road for 6 hours. But you try to get as much out of a session with as least hours as possible to have more time for recovery. And
So it sounds to me like you've touched, I think, on a number of things where I would say, oh, that's very much in line with the science. But then you also touch on things where you say, well, it's trial and error. So how much of your preparation is based on science, you think, and how much is just trial and error?
I think isn't science always trial and error? That's at least what I learned from my studies. I mean, of course, you are not a laboratory rat. Maybe some cyclists are, I don't know. But at the end, reality always catches up to you at one point. So you could make this really nice plan, and then you're sitting in a plane to Newcastle, and they have this like really nice cookie in the airplane, and you're just kind of feeling hungry. Of course, I didn't eat it. But what I want to say is, like, when you travel a lot, it's getting more difficult. So you really have to make a plan before that to stay as close to the science world as possible. On the other hand, I read an article some time ago how much time they spend to try to make the astronaut food taste better. Couldn't they just get like some nutrient gel so that they get all the stuff they need? No, because eating is always linked to our head, right? I mean, if we sit together and eat for like since mankind, right? We make a nice fire and then we make some food. And so I think it's when you just see it from a scientific standpoint, you're missing a lot of parts that's included in nutrition. And also in my sport, there are a couple of suppliers who actually say, like, why do we actually need to taste this gel like strawberries or whatever? We just like let all this stuff out, and at the end it's just like some nutrient gel which probably has all the nutrients, but it's tasting like and you don't want to have that, right? So I try to stay as close to the science world as possible, and I also try new things when they come up. But never in like the maximum extreme. Like, I know a lot of guys who always take it to the extremes, and also with like the new trend of low carb diet and train fasted and stuff. I mean, I have seen guys that just like fell off their trainer at home because their brain just shut down because of the lack of sugar in the head. So it's always like keep it a little bit balanced.
Yeah. Balance is a very important word, I think, in this. So one thing that intrigued me is that you were talking about 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour, and I know a lot about 90 grams per hour because I spent a lot of years of my life studying 90 grams versus 60 grams. So how did you arrive at the 90 grams? Was that kind of partly trial and error, or was it just that's the advice and that's the
I mean, like I said, three things really influence the performance in long distance triathlon, and one of the biggest is definitely how much energy you could intake, because like I said, I could run much faster in training and I could cycle much faster in training, but because at one point you are lacking of energy, and so that's really an important part, is not only try to take as much fuel as possible, but also that it's digested in the fastest way possible. And I mean, when I started triathlon, there wasn't even a gel on the market back then. So at the first time, I thought, like, I don't need this industrial stuff. I want to make my own thing. And well, it wasn't like the perfect solution, so to speak. So I think with the fructose and maltodextrin mix, so where you use those both ways how you digest carbohydrates, it's definitely like one of the reasons why the times actually developed this much in the last 5 or 6 years, because people could intake more carbohydrates. And yeah, I mean, I'm working together with Powerbar pretty much since I become a professional athlete, and yeah, it works really well for me, the formula.
Obviously.
Thanks.
Yeah. Very good. So just looking at my watch, and I wanted to open it up for questions to the audience as well. So we have another 10 minutes or so if people want to ask their questions.
Hi, very interesting and everything. Congratulations. I just want to know your body composition.
Here we go. She just wants to take the skin photos. It's okay.
Naked scanner. So during off season, at a height of 181 centimeters, it's between 76 and 77 kilograms. Before Hawaii, I'm pretty much at 72 kilograms. I'm really happy that I'm not a climber at the Tour de France where you only eat boiled water most of the times. So yeah, it's of course body weight is an important thing in all sports pretty much. And of course I want to be as light as possible, but without sacrificing recovery. And the problem is always, for example, when I start to cut down carbs at the dinner, for example, the quality of sleep is getting worse and worse and worse. During I have like the biggest intensity in like the whole year round. So it's very important. We always speak about balance to balance that, and I always made the experience that I'm not traveling with the scale. So the only time when I weight myself is directly in front of the race morning, because everybody gets weighted before the race, so that they know if you're suffering like severe lack of fluids after the race, or if you have some troubles. So yeah, I'm not monitoring this too closely because I realize it's just like really getting into my head. And yeah, my wife, she's a former runner, steeplechase, and like probably half of the whole team back then had like severe problems with eating disorders and stuff. And it's a very common thing in high performance sports, especially for women, and especially for runners. Yeah. So, but I think it's just important to realize how important recovery is, and then you know how important it is to not overdo it with the loss of body weight.
Hi, this is more like triathlon related. I remember in 2014 when you were on Conan, Chris McCormack said like the game is going to happen when Sebastian catches the puck. So what did he mean, and how does it feel like to inspire your rivals in that way?
Yeah, Chris McCormack won this race himself 2 times. So, and the first time I've ever been to the US, I was in LA and I trained together with him. So, yeah, it's of course it's amazing if somebody somebody like this finds such nice words for you. Yeah, it's a great feeling. I always I have been used to race from the back because I'm a shit swimmer, so to say, and but it puts you in a nice position during a race because you're always catching up, right? It's usually I never lost a position in a race. It really happens very rarely that somebody else is overtaking me. So it's a strong mental position when you race from behind. Of course, it would be even better to have just like a victory from the front when you never see anybody.
So what made you start focusing in nutrition? Or
you repeat this question, please?
Yeah, just ask.
Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. What made you start focusing in nutrition? Like who or what happened in your career?
Yeah. A couple of really bad bonk rides, I would say. I mean, it's probably one of the most intense feeling when you think you're strong and you are really strong, but you are running out of fuel. Yeah. So it's difficult to explain actually to people who are not having had this sensation. But when I explain people why I'm actually doing this, it's such a satisfying feeling to come back home after a long bike ride and just having some soda or whatsoever, some form of sugar under the shower. It's like heroin. Not that I know how this acts, but that's how I imagine it is. And when you are a young athlete, or when you, especially now, I don't know how long it actually takes to lose some of this ability, but when I do my off season, I'm not really doing any training for probably 3 weeks, and then when I do the first longer ride, let's say 3.5 hours, it's like at one point, because when I stop the season, I'm in top shape, and I could ride for 5-6 hours without even having any food. I could do that just with pretty much water and some mineral tablets or something, and then you come back to this, and you're bonking after like 3 hours, and that's like really a bad feeling. So I always have like an emergency bar with me when I go for this ride at the beginning of the year. That's where you realize how important it really is, and I think it's even more intense when you're having this feeling when you are like 14 or 15 in the first training camp. Yeah.
Hand delivered.
Do you include strength training sessions in your preparation? And if so, do you feel any benefit in your performance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, those 3 things that, in my opinion, are really influencing the performance. It's like muscle fatigue, energy, and mental exhaustion. And muscle fatigue is really a key, especially on the run, because you don't have to carry your body weight during the swim and the bike. And then at one point, it almost feels like your legs are not holding yourself anymore. You have the feeling it's gonna collapse on every second. And since you can't do 8-hour training sessions where you run a marathon like on a weekly basis or something. You try to simulate this by doing a different kind of strength exercises. And so one of the things we are doing is like, we have a period where I do like a lot of repeats, probably like 30 repeats, 4 series, with like 65% of my max weight, like different kinds of exercises, especially for the legs. And then there's a break, and then there's another like 3 weeks where I do maximum weight. And probably some of you might ask what's the sense behind maximum weight when you just do like 3 repeats, when you have to do like probably 20,000 pedal strokes for the 180K. Yeah, science shows that it's really helping actually muscle fatigue, and even more important is that it's not building any unnecessary volume. I don't want to gain weight actually during weight training, or during strength training. That's important. And then we combine endurance and weight training. For example, right now, one of the key sessions is I'm on a stationary trainer, and I'm doing a really high frequency on the bike, but very low intensity. And then I do that for 15 minutes, and then I get off the bike and I do squats, for example, or just like leg press for a couple of repeats, and then I hop on the bike again. So it's always a combination of that, and you could simulate exhaustion, muscle exhaustion, really good with that. Yeah, that's what we do, and then we also try to do strength training before rest days, so to boost recovery, because you get a higher outtake of testosterone, and that also goes together with nutrition on that day. So the day with the highest volume, the next day we do a really intensive strength training session, and after that you try to cut down the carbs a little bit for the rest day also. So yeah.
One last little question, and then we'll wrap up.
Do you use caffeine?
So I could answer that really quick.
It's kind of almost become a little bit more commonplace to do Ironman now, if I can say that in this audience, but it has become over the last several years more common. Where do you think the limit is? Do you think there's going to be another distance event at some point? Because people just keep pushing themselves and keep pushing themselves.
How long is my answer allowed? So, so let's go a little bit philosophic here. Yeah. I think we just invented planes, cars, elevators, stuff like that, probably in the last 100 years. But when you go one floor downstairs, you see that the history is a little bit longer. And I think the humans are made for endurance sport or for all kinds of movements, and I think that's the reason why the people are doing that to themselves. And I mean, I'm getting paid for this, but the most other people are actually paying a shitload of money for doing this. But that's the reason why they do it. It's they're all having the same sensation, and it's probably not only because they want to post it on their Facebook profile. At least that's what I'm hoping. So caffeine, yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, not only because I like coffee, because it's definitely the best researched legal performance enhancing thing single substance you could take, I guess. But also there, you have to be careful. Like, I mean, a lot of people taking in caffeine gels during a race, and then they have sodas with caffeine on the run, and then they have like their couple of morning joes and whatever. So it starts to add up, and at the end, they're ending up with like 4 or 5 grams of caffeine. You're laughing, but it's really the case. I mean, when you have like 150 milligram in a gel, and some gels do that, and they're having like 10 gels, and then they're having coffee and more other sodas on the run, and it's getting really dangerous. So I think it's important to educate people that yes, caffeine might help you, but it's not gonna giving you any wings. At the end, if you are not really having any.
Excellent. Can I ask who's actually done a triathlon here? Okay, hands down. Now everyone else put their hand up. See, these are the people that are going to sign up for a triathlon next year. So.
Or they probably never will.
We'll see, but I think we'll wrap it up here. It's been an absolute pleasure, Sebastian, listening to your story and your answers. I hope that you've enjoyed it too. You've definitely inspired me, and looking at the number of hands that went up, I think inspired a lot of people to start doing triathlon. So a big applause for Sebastian Kienle.